Right, so I have my sourdough starter mixed in with all three of my doughs, and I'm left with these 3 jars who still have a little bit of starter left in them. Now, sometimes when you mix up a separate batch of starter specifically for a certain bake, so it's separate from your main starter, and you've mixed it specifically for that bake, maybe you altered the flours or you altered the hydration level specifically for that bake, sometimes you'll even add other ingredients to it. That is called a levain. And that's the difference between a levain and a starter. Your starter is always your starter. Your levain is what you mix up specifically for that bake. And so what I have now is I have these 3, and one of the, there's a lot of different ways, obviously, to make bread. And I have to say, just because I'm so fascinated with real natural food, doing what real natural food does all on its own, I'm kind of a purist. There's lots of recipes that are out there that will call for some sourdough starter and some commercial yeast. And there's nothing wrong with that. Lots of great bread is made with commercial yeast, but it's just not as fun for me. Like I said, I'm just a little bit of a purist. I really try to do nothing, no baking soda, no commercial yeast, just nothing but natural starter. The other thing is, this is gonna make more of an artisanal type bread. So this is gonna give you that really caramelized crust that's a little bit chewy, a little bit thicker, and lots of flavor. So think about like bread bowls and nice thick hearty bread for stews. And I love to toast it and put like berries and preserves and stuff like that on it. I don't know if anybody under 60 says preserves, but it's just a really tasty, hearty bread. And some people, like sourdough is called sourdough because it has a little bit of a sour flavor from the fermentation, but that can vary. It can vary depending on the flours you use. It can vary depending on your fermentation process. I just like it because it's just a really nice, hearty bread. If you are after those softer, like a sandwich loaf or dinner rolls, oftentimes those will have ingredients added to them that make them softer, and typically it's dairy of some kind, like usually milk or cream, and sometimes it will have butter or eggs, just depends. And since I am not a vegan, in fact I had chicken for lunch today, but I do recognize how much healthier a plant-based diet is for you. And so whenever I can, I try to do everything plant-based. And to me, I love the artisan loaves. I love the crusty bread. So to me, adding dairy and eggs and all that other stuff just doesn't add anything to it for me. Now, Billy would disagree. He likes that softer loaf. In fact, if I would just bring home a sliced Wonder bread, he would be happy. But for me, it doesn't really add anything to it. So I would say in that respect, I'm a purist as well. All the breads that I make, unless I specifically do something for some reason otherwise, are nothing but flour, water, and salt. So anyway, I have these leftover starters. Really, there's enough in any one of these jars for me to keep Gertie going. So I was gonna combine them, but it's really not necessary. I'm just gonna go ahead and take about that much and drop it in a brand new, clean, sterilized jar. And I'll go ahead and feed that. I'll put a lid on it. I'm gonna say 6 loaves, banana bread, and 3 dozen cookies is gonna be plenty of baking for me this weekend. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the fridge until probably Thursday. When I'll bring it out, I'll let it ferment, come up to room temperature. I'll feed it a couple more times and maybe do some baking next weekend. If something comes up and I don't want to bake next weekend, it's no problem. I can just pull her out. I can let her come up to room temperature, and when she does that, she'll ferment and rise. Feed her and just stick her right back in the refrigerator. So it takes a little bit of work to maintain a starter, but really it's not that bad. So that's it for now. And I added the starter to those doughs about 20 minutes ago. So about 10 more minutes, I'll pull the first one over and add the salt And then it's going to be a process of stretch and folds every 30 minutes for 2 hours, which is part of what we call the bulk rise. And that is where we're starting to get some fermentation, but we're also starting to build gluten and structure and strength to the dough. So that's going to be the next step. We've done all of our preparation. We've got the sourdough in. We're going to have the salt in pretty quickly. Now we're moving on to phase 2.